Second-year players that I am targeting in fantasy football drafts for 2026. We touched on this earlier in the offseason, and now that players are hitting OTAs and we are getting all the hype videos, it is the perfect time to revisit and take a look at the young guys ready to break out in their sophomore season. There are a lot of options, but only a select group that I am actively trying to ensure wind up on my fantasy rosters. We talked about some of these guys recently in the running backs video. I'll save the running backs for last, and I will link that video at the end of this video as well. So we'll start off with the pass catchers here. This one is very direct for me. Anytime that I am sniped in best ball drafts on Emeka Egbuka, I shed a tiny tear because I am so ready for Emeka Egbuka wide receiver 1 season. Usually I try to temper expectations, but for his current draft price, yeah, I am all in at this point. Emeka's hot start compared to the back half of last season might make you panic a little bit and say it was a flash in the pan where he benefited from Mike Evans, but I don't think that was the case. I'm less concerned because it's not as if there was another receiver that was out there thriving or taking work from him while Emeka Egbuka was struggling. It wasn't that situation. No. The entire Tampa offense, and especially Baker Mayfield in the receiving core, just really struggled and looked a hot mess. I think it was an offensive coordinator issue and a Baker Mayfield issue. He was going through some stuff, okay? Gonna bounce back in 2026. The entire team was off. But let's talk about the 2025 start here. In the first 5 weeks of the season, he had 5 touchdowns and 2 games with over 100 yards. Mind you, this was over a very tough defensive stretch against Houston, the New York Jets before the trades, obviously, Philadelphia, Seattle. And it is very important to note that those 2 100-yard games were with Mike Evans injured. So we literally saw him thrive in tandem with a healthy Mike Evans, and we saw him take over with massive wide receiver 1 upside when he was up. However, unfortunately, after that, his entire season went sideways, and we literally had just one game where he had a touchdown and eclipsed the 100-yard mark for the entire remaining season. Baker Mayfield straight up did not look like Baker Mayfield, the version that we had seen in recent years, for a wide variety of reasons, right? And it became very, 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 very obvious that the new offensive coordinator was a clear problem, and we weren't actually seeing the continuity of the offensive success that we had seen under coordinators like Liam Cohen and Dave Canales, right? This just did not look like the same system whatsoever. Under a new offensive vision in 2026, and with Mike Evans gone, and with Chris Godwin now 30 years old, it stands to reason that Emeka Egbuka will recapture that early season magic and offer massive upside in 2026 for a very reasonable draft price. Now, the Bucs did draft Ted Hurst, who was a very popular sleeper pick, and I do like him. And they also do have Jalen McMillan, who has popped from time to time. New Bucs offensive coordinator said Emeka will start off will play as the Z receiver, and Ted Hurst will be an X receiver. It is important to note, though, he said that he will be an X receiver, not the X receiver, right? So they're still trying to figure out roles of everybody, but Emeka seems very entrenched in there. Hopefully, probably more than likely as the first look here. So just a note, as we're trying to figure out how to address the rest of the receivers in the Tampa Bay wide receiver core and how that shakes out from a fantasy perspective during training camp. But when it comes to Emeka Egbuka, treat him as the team's wide receiver 1, a guy that can push aggressive volume, and a guy that you are drafting is a borderline wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. I talked a little bit about Colston Loveland when I discussed Rome Odunze and Luther Burden in previous videos, and the thought process was that it is very possible that Colston Loveland can be the first look in this offense, and the fact that we saw him take over as the dominant player in the playoffs, that is what I'm focused in on. Now, to be fair, I don't think that Rome Odunze was really healthy or fully healed in the playoffs, but he played enough snaps to be judged off those performances. Rome and Luther Burden did take a backseat to Loveland, who had 12 receptions on 25 targets for 193 yards. Now, obviously, I would not expect Rome Odunze and Luther Burden to have just 2 catches a game every single week moving forward, right? I don't think that is going to happen, clearly. But it was great to see Loveland operate as the primary look and thrive. When it comes to tight ends, I try not to overreact to rookie seasons and overinvest in extremely high ADPs off of those big seasons because we've been on a rough stretch, unfortunately, of these young tight end 1 overall guys having great finishes and then coming down to really ugly seasons the following year. But Loveland's season wasn't a tight end 1 overall season, right? Because he started off slow. It was a late season surge. He finished as the overall tight end 12. There's a lot of room to grow here, but if you do segment it down to once he finally started playing regularly over 60% of snaps, let's say weeks 9 through 18, he was tight end 5 over that time period. And that was with Cole Kmet still actively involved and DJ Moore still on the team. I don't think that we have seen the ceiling yet for Colston Loveland. And it is very possible that he could consistently be a 7 to 10 target range guy this season. Also, while Loveland is currently tied in 3 in rankings, and it should stay that way, there is a significant gap in overall ADP between McBride and Bowers, who are second round picks, and Loveland, who is going at the 3-4 turn. That's very good value for a guy who has legitimately the same upside. It bakes in the fact that we've seen this before from McBride and Bowers, and Loveland still has to show us a full season, so we're still getting really good value for him. Loveland isn't the only tight end that I love this season. If I don't grab Loveland, I will happily settle for Tyler Warren, who I also think can be the first look in the offense, and I'm pretty based in that opinion because he did, in fact, lead the team in targets last season. Now, it was by just 1 target over Michael Pittman, but hey, a leader is a leader. It happened. And more importantly, while he was the target leader, by no means were we anywhere close to seeing a ceiling season or general, even really multiple ceiling performances from him. Because unfortunately, it lacked in volume and touchdowns, right? There were a couple of factors. The first, obviously, is the Daniel Jones injury. That was the big one, right? Jones' stress fracture occurred or was reported in week 12. The Colts had a week 11 bye. So weeks 1 through 10, Warren was tied in 6 in average fantasy points per game, averaging 13.6 fantasy points as a rookie right off the bat. Did not have to ramp up in a very crowded offense. That is incredible. Now, he did have the benefit over Loveland, right? So if we're comparing apples to apples, he did have the benefit over Loveland of not having to compete with another tight end, but still, very impressive production that early. Jones immediately struggled playing through that injury. He wasn't really moving around. You could tell it was a major issue because who on earth plays through a fracture? But, kudos to him for at least trying. Unfortunately, quickly, the Achilles injury came there. So weeks 12 through the end of the season, Warren averaged just 7.5 fantasy points per game. It was nasty. But for reference, guys, so you don't say, oh, Warren just disappeared. Nope, he's not for real. No, the entire offense crashed, right? We talked about this ad nauseum. Jonathan Taylor crashed. Alec Pierce kind of held his own through touchdowns, but it was either 0 to 3 fantasy points or a big boom game, right? Pittman also averaged 7.5 fantasy points over that time period, coincidentally or not so coincidentally, because let's talk about the fact that Michael Pittman's trade might benefit Tyler Warren more than anybody. Yeah. Pittman low-key operated tight end-ish, right? For such a big guy, he has a very relatively low ADOT last season of just 8.4. He's an intermediate possession receiver. And while I would suspect, for all the money that they paid to Alec Pierce, they will obviously try to vary his usage a bit more, and he'll operate as the wide receiver 1. But for the most part, I would expect a big boost in targets to also benefit Warren and Downs specifically because they operate in the space specifically that Pittman vacated. So, and more importantly, right, while I would like to see additional targets, the real key factor is we're not looking for an insane boost in targets. We want a good boost in targets, but the key factor here for Warren ascending is those Michael Pittman touchdowns leading. Now, previously, prior to Aaron Jones, the touchdowns weren't there, right? But we had a nice year for Michael Pittman's touchdowns, a career year for him. And those should go to Warren because of the size factor there. Pittman's exit will open up targets, but more importantly, the big-bodied red zone looks. Pittman had 5 touchdowns inside the 20. 3 of those were inside the 5. Warren only had 4 receiving touchdowns. Increased red zone looks are the key to truly unlock the overall tight end 1 upside that Warren has. And very similar to Colston Loveland, there's a nice gap in rankings overall. Loveland is overall 37th, while Warren is overall 60th. That is excellent value. Now, Tyler Shough is mainly a super flex target for me because in a typical redraft league, my strategy is that I'm rolling with 1 quarterback that I trust, unless I'm taking a very risky swing that I need to pair with a stability quarterback just in case, or it's an extremely deep league with a very big bench and we're rostering 2 quarterbacks, right? But Shough would not be someone that I would want as my QB1 initially in a 1 QB league because I just don't enjoy pushing quarterback that far back. But I would not be shocked, and I kind of do expect that even in a 1 QB league, Tyler Shough may end up being, and probably will end up being, a preferred weekly starter because he is in a fantastic situation. Now, before I dive too far in, I know your first thought, but Tara, the NFL has film on him, so he will not be as good. Yeah, that's a possibility, right? That's a possibility for any player. But if that was a uniform rule, then all second year players would suck, and that doesn't happen. So he is not a lock to have downturned production. But he's also not a lock to have improved fantasy production, right? But all things are looking up for Tyler Shough. The Saints have really done right by him this offseason, right? I love what they did. They upgraded to Travis Etienne in free agency. They added Jordan Tyson in the draft, and they even added a potential wide receiver 3 in Bryce Lance, or perhaps maybe Devon Vele finally takes a step up in a full season under Kellen Moore. But the addition of Tyson is huge because the Saints had an incredibly depleted receiving core. While Chris Olave was fantastic, love him, right? It was literally just him and Jawan Johnson. Tyler Shough couldn't even benefit from having a strong running back to throw to since Alvin Kamara was visibly cooked and then injured. Jordan Tyson arguably has the highest ceiling of all rookies if he remains healthy. In a perfect world, Tyler Shough will have one of the most formidable wide receiver duos in the league. He also has the benefit of consistency, and that's beautiful, right? Because he will continue through the same system. No major changes, just pretty much the addition of more weapons. Literally everything is pointing in a positive direction for him to build on that 2025 debut, which was, surprisingly very strong. Proved me wrong. Good for him. Tyler Shough played 11 games, but really, he only started about half the season. He pushed very good volume with over 2,000 yards. He showed rushing upside there. He is in a great spot for 2026. And for running backs, again, I talked about this more in detail about a lot of these guys in the more recent running backs video that I will link at the end of the video. But would it be a video if I did not discuss Bhayshul Tuten? Look, by no means will Tuten ever be someone that I draft as my RB1, right? I do not employ zero RB. I don't have the heart for it. It will literally give me palpitations, right? I prefer a nice hero RB strategy. I did lean robust RB last year. I could do that again this year, but I'm definitely not fading running back this year. It ain't happening, right? Likely I'll end up with a hero RB strategy, right? Which means I will need to invest in an RB2 in the low end to high end RB3 range. The low end RB2 to high end RB3 range. And Tuten is one of those guys, right? The justification for me is very simple. The Jags wide receiver or running back room 100% could operate as a committee. That's true. It's not as if Travis Etienne was pushing 300 carries last year. The Jags were run heavy, but lest we forget, a lot of that was Trevor Lawrence, right? So I'm being very realistic about this. When it comes to this backfield, Chris Rodriguez is an early down goal line type of back. So while there's a lot of noise being made around Rodriguez and his connection with Liam Cohen, rest assured, that man cannot block, and he caught 13 passes with Cohen at Kentucky. He is well aware of that limitation. He is not going to try and push that. Tuten isn't exactly the second coming of CMC, right? But between Tuten and Rodriguez, Tuten is the only one that could theoretically handle 3-down work and catch. He's shown that he can catch. We just got to figure out if he can improve that blocking as well. And again, Tuten's red zone usage, both on the ground and through the air, was very impressive for a rookie serving as a backup. So again, this is just hedging my bets between these two guys. I also talked about Quinshon Judkins in the running backs video, so I will tighten this one up for you as well. He is on the field. He is active, running, cutting. Yay. If I were to compare this to a previous situation, I do like to look at Breece Hall, another young running back coming off of an ACL injury. We were skeptical of what was going to happen, guys, but Breece Hall was on the field, visibly on video, at OTAs in June that season. Then he started off training camp on the PUP, which is not unusual. And then he was cleared fairly quickly and he was ready to go. Week 1, had a slow ramp up of about 4 weeks and then hit very heavy usage and finished as a top 5 back. And yes, before you go back and look at those stats, it was the Aaron Rodgers injury season, right? So the vast majority of that production was receptions, right? But I'm not comparing the usage. I am comparing the recovery timeline and the ability to start in week 1. Play a full 17 games with very high touches. It was over 300 for Breece, by the way. and be successful and have an RB1 finish, because it is very important to remember that not everyone comes off of a major injury looking like Javonte Williams. So it is very possible that Judkins is the opposite of that and has a complete, very fulfilling fantasy season if the new offensive line does pan out. I saved up Jeanty for last because he's not necessarily someone that I am aggressively targeting in fantasy drafts, because I really like guys like Saquon Barkley and Devon Achane. So naturally, it's tough for me to get a ton of Jeanty shares when those are my preferences, right? But I do want to speak on him because I do think he is an excellent target in line for a big leap in 2026. Jeanty is a borderline round 1 pick coming off of a year of being overdrafted by fantasy managers and a disappointing outcome, primarily because of efficiency and consistency issues. A 3.7 yards per carry average is just not going to cut it. But he got a new head coach and a new quarterback, which is going to be Kirk Cousins for however long, right? Maybe 4 to 6 games before they put Fernando Mendoza in there. But Kirk Cousins has never been detrimental for a running back, so that doesn't really matter, right? More importantly, he will have a new offensive line. Ashton Jeanty was not the problem. He showed an incredibly high ceiling multiple times despite the team's complete ineptitude. And he has the added benefit of huge receiving upside. I do have mild concerns that Mike Washington sniping at the goal line is very possible because of who their head coach is, but we will see it in training camp before we have to make that final evaluation. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Tera Time. I am also live every Wednesday on YouTube at 8 p.m. EST, so make sure that you stop by and chat. It is always a good time. You can ask me any questions that you want. You can also subscribe to my Substack if you want to support me another way. And if you are looking for new fantasy football tools in 2026, look at Player Profiler. You can use my promo code TERA for 25% off at Player Profiler.